Hi, in this video we will learn how to build the second part of our app, the part where in the app we have a screen where we can see all the roles sent by the other users of the app. So to build this screen we need to collect the roles from the internet where they were stored. In the previous tutorial we have seen how to send roles to the internet. So in this part we have to retrieve these roles from the internet, and then we have to put them on screen. So what you see here is a list of all the roles that I've sent on the internet, and that's how they look like. So as I told you in the previous tutorial, what you see here is one role, that's another, etc. And they are all stored in a bucket. So I think in the previous tutorial I had used a bucket of roles, and I don't know why I changed that for a list of roles here. So sorry for the change. It's list of roles in this tutorial. So when you click on one in this on one row, you see what's inside. So you have the ID of the role, like the unique ID, and inside a role is simply two things: an author, which is Senclay, it's me, and a role, it was test, whatever. So this is stored in the JSON format in the here in this database online. So you should have watched the tutorial on what is JSON, but let me show you how this thing here looks like in practice. So this is what we have on the internet. We have the ID of the first row, the ID of the second row, and for each ID we have a JSON object. So what we have is two levels of JSON objects. If you remember the tutorial, we have the one big JSON object, and inside it we have one JSON object here. This is the first row, and the second JSON object there. So we don't worry about that. We just need to know that the roles are stored as JSON objects inside this big JSON object. So that's how we will work. And when we will get these roles, well, we want to put them on screen. So here I just show you the wall of the application, and what we want to achieve is something like that. We want to, for each role that we get, we want to display them from top to the bottom of the screen. So we would and we want to have the name of the person who rolls and then the text. So we want them to be from left to right. That's going to be a flow layout. So we need a container for that. Again, here you should just check again the slides on the PDF on layouts. So I show you what the program is going to do. Here I'm just showing to you in the designer, but we will write code that will do that automatically for each role we receive from the internet. What the code is going to do is create a container for one role, and it's going to create a label for it, a label in it, sorry. So you see we have a label inside, so that's going to be the role by me, Senclay. And then next to the label we'll have the text of the row. It's going to be a label as well. Oh, it could be a span label. Anyway, for the tutorial I just used a label. And that's going to display like, hey, this is a row sent by another user. So maybe that the user July, she would use her app and she would click on refresh, and then she would see this row arriving, and then she would see all the other rows, not just one but actually all the other rows in a list. So that's what we want to achieve, but we can't do it in the designer. We need to code that. So just to recap, we need to write some code that will get the roles from the internet, and the roles are written in the JSON format. So we're going to use what we've seen in the tutorial about how to read JSON objects. And then for each role, we're going to create a container where we're going to put one label with the name of the author of the role, and a second label in the container with this with the text of the role. And then for each role, a new container. And then we say put all of that in the screen, so it's a form. Put all of that in the form and refresh the screen. So let me show you how all these things are written in code. So basically what we started doing is, let me go back to the designer, is take the button refresh. I think the container is the designer is a bit buggy, but basically we select the button refresh, then we go to events and we click on action event. When you do that, it creates this thing here that we don't really need to understand. It just means that anything that will happen between this curly brace, oops, and this one, everything written between these curly braces is going to be executed, is going to be done when the button is clicked. So now it's I'm just writing what I want to be executed. So just neglect the try because it's been automatically added to the code. I didn't write it myself. So I just started by saying where should the app connect, where on the internet are the roles, and this is the address. So this is the text, and I put it in the box roles, and it's a box for text, so string. Why this address? Simply because let me go back here, because this is exactly the address where the roles are, and the only difference is that you have to add .json just to say this is some text in the JSON format. And why do I know that? It's just because I read the documentation in Firebase, firebaseio.com. They have a lot of documentation, and you just have to follow the instructions. That were their instructions. Then I connect to the internet, and here codename 1 provides you with a very convenient object called connection request, and you create a new object, you put it in a box called request, which specializes in receiving objects like connection request. Once this object is created and put into the box, you can apply actions. And I read the documentation. I don't have the book here. Yeah, I have it. So I was just reading this book. So that's if you are a French reader, but if you don't speak French or if you don't read French, you just go to Codename 1, the website, and there is a manual of how to connect to the internet. And I just read the manual. They say when you have created this object and you put it in the box, you should apply these actions to receive stuff from the internet. So I just followed the instructions. First, you have to write the address where we should connect. And the address is in this box. So I just put the box. Then you should write this. Okay. It just this action. It just means that we don't want to post things on the internet. We want to receive it. So we have to say it. This does the same. It means that the method we want to use is the one to get stuff from the internet, not to post, not to upload. We want to download stuff. And finally, this action is just to say that we are going to receive text in the JSON format. You have to say it. If you don't, the object doesn't know what kind of thing it will receive. And then we have a bit of black magic. This thing just actions the object. This thing says, okay, now connect to the internet. This is what creates the connection. And when we move to this line, the connection has been made and the data, so the text, the roles, are being received. So this line is a bit complicated, but if you look at it, not too much. It's as usual. We have a box here that we create, and we receive data not as as letters. We receive it as zeros and ones. You know, the stuff of computers, zeros and ones. That's how we receive the data, the roles initially. So we have to create a box that specializes in receiving bytes, you know, the 0 and 1s. And we put an object in it, byte array input stream. It's really like, it's like Greek to me, but it's an object that specializes in receiving zeros and ones from the internet. And when you create this object, you know, sometimes when you create object, you can put parameters. The parameter for this object is, is the data we just received, because the connection has been made. You know, we get the response data from the connection we just did, and we use it to create this object we put in the box. But it's just zeros and ones, so that's not going to be helpful to read. So in the next step, we create a box where we put an object which is going to be text. Text, it's okay, we can read that. And how do we go from zeros and ones in the previous box to text? Black magic. We have some, we use a method, an action, which is a bit complicated, but it's very easy to write, which transforms the bytes, you know, the zeros and ones, into a text. And this thing here is needed to say that it's a text written in, well, it just says that, well, it's a bit complicated to explain, but it's just to say that the text contains symbols that are part of this convention, you know, like Latin letters or Arabic letters or Chinese letters, or, I mean, all of these are codes which belong to this convention. So it's a very complicated topic, but we just have to write that. That's not a big deal. So now we have finally received all our roles as text. So basically we received something like that. It's great. So now how do we get access to, you know, this and this? That's just what we need to put that on screen. Well, we use, and here you should maybe check back the tutorial on JSON, we use a special object that will help us, you know, get the information we need in this awful stuff. So we just take the text that we received here, and we use it to create a JSON object. Again, something a bit mysterious. We don't need to know what it is. It's just very helpful. And this object, we put it in this box. And why is it useful? Because this box, we can now use actions to retrieve the information we need. So the first thing we're going to do is take all the names inside the JSON. So what it means is that we have a first name here. So name is actually not a good, that's not the proper word. It should be called an attribute. But who cares, right? So we're just going to take a list, or as they call it, an array. So it's kind of a list of all the names in our JSON object. So this is our JSON object. And inside it, we have all these names. And we're going to take all these names and say, for each of these names, please take the JSON object that corresponds to them. It's a bit complicated, I know, but it's just to repeat. We will take a list of all these names, 1, 2, in order to say for each of these names, you know, this one and this one, retrieve the corresponding JSON object. And then when we have the JSON object here, we say take the author and create a label for it. Take the role and create a label for it. And then move on to the next attribute or name. Take the JSON that corresponds, the JSON object that corresponds to it. And in this JSON object, take the author name, which is Saintly. Take the role, which is, this is a test. So it's a bit of, it's long, it's boring, but it works. So that's what we do here. We take the list of the names in our big JSON object, and we put it in a list or an array. You know, we just make a list of them. Now we are ready to put things on the screen, almost. So we should actually take the screen and put it in a box so that we can have actions on it. So C here, where does it come from? C, that's what you see here, right? Component C. It represents the button. Why? Because anything which is executed in these curly braces is executed when we clicked on the button. So very helpfully, this code gives us a box where the button is already contained, right? And the button is a component. So if we want to have a box with a screen in it, we take the button, and one action of the button is to say, please take the screen where the button is. That's what it means. Get component form is an action that says, take the screen where the component, so where the button is, and put it. And we put it in the box we call wall screen. So we have our screen in a box here. That's going to be useful. We create a container for all the roles. So we create a container, we put it in a box we call my container. We're going to give this container a layout, which is a y-axis layout, you know, vertically aligned. So we create a box layout. You see that the parameter is a bit strange. We have not seen this kind of way to write code, but you know, just copy paste that from the documentation. So we create a box layout and we put it we create a box layout and we put it in a box, my layout. And then we say, you know, this container we just created and that we put in this box, one action is that we can decide which layout we want for it. And we want to put a box Y layout for it. So that's what this action does. So now we have created a container for all our tweets. Good. What we do now is we're gonna, so it's a bit hard to follow, but step by step. Let me check what we do. Yes, oh, that's complicated. But that's, I mean, that's very simple, but that's a bit convoluted. This is a loop, and you know, which starts here and finishes here between the curly braces. If you don't know what it is, you should check the tutorial on curly braces. It means that everything between these curly braces, you know, all this code here, is going to be executed many times as long as whatever is written in these brackets is true. Why do we do that? It's just to say that we want to create as many, you know, labels as we have roles in the data we received. We want to create one label and the, you know, the author and the role, for each row we receive. So we start with 0 rows. I create a box where I put 0. And then I say, as long as this counter is lower than the number of rows we received. So you should go back here. I hope you understand that the length of this JSON object, let me go back here, is 1, 2, if we have 2 rows. As long as the counter of rows is lower than the number of rows we have, do the following. First, retrieve the ID corresponding to the first row, so number 0. So we number 0, number 1. So we retrieve this ID, number 0. And again, that's very hard to get, but yeah, I must admit it's very hard. It just means that in the list of row IDs, we want to get the one that is number 0. So this one. And we put it in this box. So we have the name of the first ID in this box. And then what we can say is say, retrieve the JSON object corresponding to this ID. So retrieve this JSON object, oops, sorry, because this is the one corresponding to this ID. That's what this line does. Retrieve in this JSON object, retrieve the one corresponding to the first ID and put it in this box, which specializes in receiving JSON objects. And I think yeah, and the reason why we have to do that is mysterious. Why do we have to put JSON object in parentheses before? That's really strange. But just ignore that, it's a bit complicated. So now we have this JSON object in this box. And this is much more simple from now. We create a container, that's what we do here. And we, from the JSON object, we say get the value of author and put it in a box. Get the value of the row and put it in a box. So basically it means that we're gonna take this value of author, so it's saintly, and put it in a box. Take the value of row, this is an example of a row, and put it in a box. That's what we do here. And create a label for where the name of the author will be, you know, the content of this box, and where the content of this row will be, so 2 labels. And you add these labels to the container. So adding labels to containers should be familiar with you because we did that in the designer a lot. We just do the same, but by coding. And then in the big container of all rows, we add 1 row. So let me change that. My container is not very clear. I'm gonna change its name, my container for all rows. That's more clear. So in the big container for all rows, add the container for the row I just created. And then move on to the next row. Everything we did so far was for this one. Then we just say, move on to the second one. How do we do that? We just say, well, increase the counter of 1. So we're gonna, again, this loop executes as long as this is true. So we were at counter equals 0 at the beginning, but here we say counter is now equal to 0 plus 1 equals 1. So the counter is equal to 1, it's still lower than the number of rows, which is 2. So everything will execute again, but it will get the second row, because now when we say get the name, get the ID of the second row, you know, of counter of rows is now equal to 1, not equal to 0. So it's not gonna take this row anymore. That's counter 0, that's counter 1, right? And for this row, it will take the new author, you know, the author of this new row, the row of the text of the row of this new row is going to create a new label, a second new label. I'm going to put them in a new container, and it will add it to the container for all rows, so that we have 2 rows now. And then we're finished, because we add 1 to the counter of rows, so the counter is now equal to 2. And 2 is not lower than 2. 2 is equal to 2. So since it's wrong, 2 is not lower than 2, it will not execute all of that. It will move on to the rest. And what is the rest? Just 2 lines. And we're finished. It says take the screen and add the container where we have all the rows stored. And what does it mean? Adds it at the bottom of the list of what, at the bottom of what is already in the screen. So if we have 3 buttons on the screen, so actually how many do we have? 1, 2. We have 2 buttons here. So we're going to add the container with all rows after 2, like in the 3rd position. So our rows are added to the screen, but we won't see them. To see them, we need to refresh the screen. And in codename 1, we don't say refresh, we have an action that says revalidate. And that's it. So now we might wonder what this stuff and this stuff here. So I didn't write that. It's just that when you write everything we have written, NetBeans says, hey, the language we use is makes sure that if there is any error in your code, you are able to trace the error. And the way it works is that, for example, if you try to connect to the internet, that's what we do here. But if the connection does not work, you should be able to know about that. So you should be able to catch the error. And that's what these things do. If there is an error in connecting to the internet, execute everything in the curly braces. Execute, so let me write that like that. Catch this error, like an error in the connection, and then do that. And this just means say error, but you could do anything you want, or you can do nothing, right? There is an error, the app will crash. That's it. So just to insist, these bits of things of text are a bit intimidating, but it's just that on if you don't have them, let me delete them. Let me delete all of that. Right? I have written the code. You see that I have red alerts here, and it's because, so you click on them, and this is where NetBeans tells you you should add the catch error thing around what you have just written, because when there is an error, it will be caught. So I just click on surround block, the block of code I've written, with the catch error thing. I just click here, and you see it has been added here. Oh, by the way, when you see that, you should delete that because it's not going to work. Yeah, you should delete this line because logger doesn't work actually. So you should delete that. And then there is another thing like that, which is you should catch this error. So yeah, I catch it as well. Add catch clause. And it adds, you know, if there is an error in the JSON, in reading the JSON. So same, you delete this line. It's important because actually codename1 does not understand this line. So you delete it. But it's not enough. You should delete it here. So here at the top, you see these import things. It means that's the list of all the objects we use. And we don't need these objects, and actually codename1 does not recognize them. So you should click here and say remove all objects we didn't use. So you click here, and we should be good. And here, big mistake like that, it means we have one curly braces, which is too much. Yeah, we're good. Why is it complaining here? Yeah, the object is missing. Okay, so the very hard part was really to explain the JSON object thingy here. So it's just because we have a JSON object nested inside a big JSON object, and it's just, you know, it's a big headache to understand that. But again, take your time, and there is no math here, there is nothing hard. It's just you need a bit of patience to reread the slides, fiddle around, and get the logic. If you get the logic, you will be able to use the same logic to develop your own apps where you won't send roles and receive roles. You're going to send any text which is relevant to the app you build. But that's actually, as you see, it's boring and a bit complex, but nothing amazing. So thank you for following, and I think it might be the toughest tutorial of the entire course. I'm sure you feel it. Please, please take some extra time to really get this lesson. Post as many questions as you want on the forum. I'm gonna take all the time I have to answer your questions. Thank you.